Are you curious about what yoga looks like off the mat, or keen to hear how yogis all around the world live? This show will let you in on the secret that there's no such thing as a perfect yogi. Welcome to the Plant-Powered Yoga Podcast. Please welcome your host, yoga teacher, coffee lover, vegan, and known as the Plant-Powered Yogi, Jess Ivers. Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode. This is episode number 2 of the Plant-Powered Yoga Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today I have a chat with one of my good yogi friends that I've met since becoming a yoga teacher in Melbourne, Suzie Byatt. She's a breath of fresh air when it comes to yoga teachers, and loved chatting with her and catching up with her. It's been a little while since we've been in lockdown. So I hope you enjoy this chat with Suzie. She is a wonderful person, has many different layers to her personality and her story, and I can't wait for you to hear about some of the exciting things that she's got going on. So without further ado, here is Suzie, and I'll check in with you at the end of our chat. All right, g'day everyone, Jess here, and I'm very excited to welcome my very first podcast guest, Suzie Byatt, all the way from Melbourne, Victoria. Welcome, Suzie.
Hi, Jess. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Suzie, you are in sunny Melbourne today. Sunny,
Yeah.
we use that term loosely.
Very loose term. The sun is out and there is blue sky, but who knows? It's Melbourne. It could last 5 minutes, 5 hours, or we'll see what happens.
See how we go. And this is sometimes, I feel like the pandemic at the moment is not so bad for Melburnians, because we're like, okay, we will just stay inside because it's miserable outdoors.
So much easier to stay at home when it's winter, but
yeah.
When you have bad heating at home, it makes it a little bit harder, which is the situation I'm in. But, you know, dealing with it, it's okay.
That's all good.
Yeah.
And how are you going with a home yoga practice during all of this?
Yeah, it's been an interesting process. I don't think that I've ever really built a very strong home practice. I really love going to a class and practicing with other people, just, you know, sharing that energy and feeling the vibe, and just even breathing with other people is so powerful. And that's what I've always been attracted to. I think that's why I've always practiced at studios when there's been classes. So it has been a difficult transition to go from that quite regularly to practicing at home. But I think one of the silver linings for me has been practicing with teachers that I haven't, or I don't usually get to practice with, because their class times might clash with mine and I just don't get to practice with them. So having a pre-recorded or a live video to practice with them is wonderful. So yeah, I think I've been enjoying it, and hopefully I've built up a bit more of a stronger home practice so I can maintain it even when, or hopefully when this is over and we can go back to studios again, because it is lovely to practice in the space of your own home and have your home comforts around, knowing that no one's watching. But I do miss that connection that you have with other people when you're practicing in a class.
There's something different about that. There's an energy.
Oh, completely different energy. That's really what drew me to yoga, I would say.
Although I have been looking at some of your videos that you have been posting on Instagram with your little doggo, who seems to bring a nice little energy to your practices.
Oh, he does. Every time I roll out my mat, he's so curious and inquisitive, and he just always wants to be around me. He watches every move so intently, and when I'm in Shavasana, he just, like, that's his cue to come and lick my hands and give me kisses. He just can't resist. It is really lovely having him, but he can be a little bit distracting.
Adorable. Well, for those who don't know Suzie and I met, it was a little bit over a year ago, I think now. We met first teaching at La Trobe Uni. I think it was the first time I met you.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. And I remember you coming in and you had this such a lovely vibe and energy about you, and you were just so super friendly, and it was really nice, because I don't know about you, but meeting other yoga teachers in Melbourne, it wasn't as easy as I thought. And even when you'd be teaching at studios, sometimes you just wouldn't cross over with people, or maybe there was a different vibe. But I feel like with you, we seem to click a little bit with our energy straight away.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I would agree. I think I've always been a really friendly person, but I think on that day I was so nervous because it was my first paid yoga teaching job, and it was the first, I think we were doing an induction and a photo shoot or something, and I had no idea what to expect. And I think when I saw you and we started chatting, and I think we had a few friends in common, it just helped me feel a little bit more relaxed. And I was like, oh, I can do this. This is fun. Yoga teachers are lovely.
Wish they were all like you. But we, then taught at another couple of different studios together around Melbourne, and got to luckily come to a few of your classes, and same, you stayed for a couple of my classes, which was very lovely.
Oh, I love your classes. Come back to
Segued into a nice compliment sandwich there for me.
No, I'm really happy that, it's just one of those things that were meant to be. Our paths were meant to align. I think it shows as well, perhaps, that we have similar perspectives and similar interests as well. So it's really nice. It was really nice the few times that I have been to your class, coming to your class and kind of listening to you share your values and your interests and weave that into yoga philosophy. Just such a grounding experience. Thank you.
Thank you, sweets. But a little bit more about your yoga journey. So how did you find yoga in your life?
Ooh, I first started practicing about 10 years ago, which seems like such a long time ago. I think I had just been on a 2-month trip around India, and I didn't do any yoga in India, but I was determined to start it up once I got back. So I had a look on the internet to see where I could practice, and at that time I don't think there were any yoga studios in the area that I was living in London. So I ended up going to a yoga class at a leisure centre just around the corner from my house, and I really didn't know what to expect. But I had always done, I'd always loved gymnastics, and I had been to gymnastics as a kid as well. So I knew that I was flexible, but I had no idea if I was going to be any good. And I use that term very loosely because I've since learned there's no such thing as being good at yoga. But people had said, oh, you'd be really good at yoga because you're so flexible. So I kind of went a bit blindly into my first class, and I was so nervous. And I think I didn't know what the teacher was talking about, but I remember that feeling of being in Shavasana and just feeling so calm and just like I could take on the world. And I thought, wow, this is something that I have to keep up with. So yeah, I think that was the starting point. I did lose my practice a little bit when I moved to Melbourne back in 2011 because I just couldn't afford the prices for a casual class, and I didn't really want to commit to a contract or anything like that because I was on a working holiday visa, so didn't know if I'd be traveling around. But the really strong connection that I had with yoga was after a really difficult breakup. And it was I was back in London at that time, and it just kind of brought in another element to my practice, like a more emotional, mental, spiritual connection, where previously it had just been a physical connection. So yeah, I think it's definitely been a journey, but I'm so grateful that I had the courage. And it does take a lot of courage sometimes, a lot of time to walk into a new environment. I just on another note as well, I'd never felt like I looked like a yoga person, just maybe a little bit of a bigger body, just not always feeling comfortable in my skin. So it is it is a difficult thing to embrace sometimes. So I'm really grateful that I had that courage to walk in and try my first class.
Well, yeah, thank goodness you did, because we're very lucky to have you in this yoga world. And yeah, touching on that aspect of not looking like a yogi, I know that's something that you and I have spoken a little bit about before together, that I know I've felt a little bit like that on like my first yoga teacher training, or even when I would go to yoga studios, I wouldn't feel quite like I was meant to. And even after I became a yoga teacher, I still thought, oh, I don't look like a yoga teacher, I don't know if I should be doing this. And it's a really interesting space to be in at the moment with, I guess, with, what you feel like you should look like as a yoga teacher and how you should be able to perform as opposed to just being yourself. And I think I've touched on this with you before about, say, you have such a beautiful practice and your flexibility is incredible. But I know that, like you just said before, there's no such thing as being good at yoga. So it doesn't matter if you can do all these amazing things, which I love looking at your chin stands and I'm like, oh, I wish I could do that. But as well, understanding that, and that's what I love about you, is that I don't look at you doing that and going, as much as I'm like, I wish I could do that, I'm not sitting here comparing myself to you either. So I think that's a really important.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's so ingrained in us that we should compare ourselves to others, whether it's a physical thing or a mental thing, or, even if it's just, oh, that person is my age and they have a house and kids. It's just in our culture, I suppose, to do that. And it's the same with yoga practice. And you said you look at my chin stands and things and you wish that you could do that. I was once like that. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I'd ever be able to do inversions, because I would never try them in class, because I always thought I was too heavy or too unbalanced or too uncoordinated or something. I just never tried. And I think I only started trying them following my teacher training, because going into my teacher training, like you mentioned, I was worried that I was going to be like the largest person there and not be able to do any of the really advanced asanas and things like that, which was so ridiculous. Like everyone looked completely different and practiced completely differently, and all had different things that they wanted to gain from their teacher training. But I think that experience of kind of just realizing that you don't have to look or be a certain way to practice those more advanced, again using that term loosely, asanas, was just gave me a little bit of confidence just to try. And then, just like anything, it was practice. Nothing is perfect. And I fell out of these inversions so many times before I could find my balance. And I think it's just like a metaphor for life, really. It just gave me I was really determined to keep trying, but it was more to prove to myself that I could do it. And because I didn't think, oh, I need to be a certain way, I need to be this strong or this thin or this whatever, insert whatever whatever you're working with on that day to do those things. So if you wanted to do it, I'm sure you could. But even if you don't, it doesn't matter, because yoga's not about doing those chin stands or those pinches at all, not at all. But I think that's where, I think we've talked about this as well, how dangerous things like Instagram and Facebook are. They're a double-edged sword, because you're kind of, especially as a yoga teacher, you're a yoga teacher, so people come to your page to see what you can do, but really it's not about what you can do at all. It's about how you can share and guide and facilitate that within individually, that sense of peace and meditative, qualities, or whatever someone's looking for in their yoga journey, whether it is flexibility, strength, or something physical, or something spiritual, mental. You want to kind of create a safe space for people to experience that. So it's not about how it looks, but we're visual people, and with things like Instagram, it's entirely visual. So
yes, unfortunately.
It's a double-edged sword, and we kind of need it, but it can be really damaging as well. So I think it's just about finding the balance.
Which is a perfect analogy for yoga, isn't it?
Absolutely. Life as well.
Yeah,
we're all I don't think I've ever 100% felt like I was living a completely balanced life. There's always a tipping of the scale on one side or the other. So
absolutely,
it's the same with yoga as well.
And every day you step on a mat can be so different.
Completely. sometimes it's enough just to step on your mat and know that you have done that, you've shown up. And then even if nothing else happens physically, doesn't matter, you've shown up. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, definitely. Showing up is 100% one of the most important parts of a yoga practice. Stepping back a little bit now, so you ended up going back to India to do your teacher training.
I did.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I just felt so, I had this desire just to go back to India, and thankfully my partner was happy to travel with me. So we organized, he organized, he's the organized one. I think it was about 5-month trip around India.
Wow.
And it was incredible. Don't ask me where I went. I couldn't tell you now. There were hundreds of places, but in the middle of that trip, there was a month's teacher training it was a 200-hour vinyasa and ashtanga training at Sampurna Yoga in Goa, which is southern India, southern Goa. So just lovely by the beach, very relaxing place, but the training was not relaxing. I think did you do an intense?
I did, yeah. Mine was 28 days.
Yeah. So when you have to fill in 200 hours in that short space of time, I think really at the end of it, mine was 3.5 weeks. It was like 14-hour days, some days. Very little sleep. I just remember my body just felt broken by the end of week 1 or week 2. I just felt,
I think I got to midway through week 2, it must have been. So I think I got through the first week and I was like, you know what, I'm feeling okay. This is good. And then it got to, I think, like the Wednesday of the second week, and I showed up for practice in our morning session, and I felt like I couldn't move. My whole body, like honestly from head to toe, was just in this weird pain I'd never felt before. It was so weird.
Yeah. I completely know that feeling. I think that hit me too. I went because our practice started at 6 a.m. So I would most days I don't know how I'd manage to spring out of bed at 5:20 in the morning, and I'd be so excited. Well, I was excited. I was so in the zone. I was ready. But this one day I just felt so broken and I couldn't move. And I went to our vinyasa practice at 6 a.m. and I ended up just laying on a bolster, I think, in Shavasana the whole 2 hours. And I did feel really bad because I didn't want the teacher to think that I wasn't interested or something, but I left that practice feeling so empowered because I felt like the first time in that 10 years that I'd been practicing or whatever it was, that I truly listened to my body and just surrendered. And it was so empowering. And I haven't done that since, but there have been times when I've been tempted just to lay down and just stay there with a blanket, getting nice and relaxed, because that is yoga and you have to listen to your body and honor your body and your mind. And that's what I needed in that time. But it was going back to the training itself. It was probably the most intense thing I've ever done, but the most incredible thing I've ever done, meeting so many people from so many nationalities and cultures. And it was a true immersion into Indian culture. And I think about India every day now. I'd love to go back. It was just incredible. Yeah.
I'm still yet to get to India, and I would love to go. I feel like as a yogi, it's obviously one of the places on the bucket list. So I'll have to definitely check out your school when I do get there eventually. And then you completed another training last year. So that was your 200-hour vinyasa, ashtanga. And then you did your 50-hour yin training last year.
I did. Yeah. In December, I was lucky enough to clear my schedule for 8 days and do my yin training with the incredible Hugh Lee. He is just an absolute legend. Just spending 8 days with Hugh just was the most grounding, connecting to myself and others experience that I think I've had, really. He has just such a calming, grounding presence. And selfishly, that was probably the primary reason that I wanted to do my yin training, because I felt like I was teaching a lot of vinyasa classes. I felt like my life was a vinyasa class. I was kind of rushing around from place to place, always traveling somewhere. I mean, I probably wasn't. This was just in my mind. My mind was the vinyasa practice. So selfishly, I wanted to do this yin training to give myself that week, that 8 days, to connect to myself and just slow down a little bit. And anything else that came from it was a complete bonus. Having that time to ground and to meditate and practice yin every day for 8 days was just such luxury. And the training itself and what I learned was just so invaluable, and has completely changed the way that I view anatomy and traditional alignment. Kind of completely threw out the window all the traditional alignment that I'd learned on my vinyasa training. Now I just, I know that we have such different bodies, and some poses will never be possible for some people. And I think that just goes back to that idea that yoga is not about how our poses look at all. It's not about the shapes that we make on the mat. And it sounds like such a cliche, but it's so true, and I can't hammer it home enough. Yeah. So I think it's had a real impact on the way that I teach, and I tend not to cue alignment. I more in my classes tend to kind of focus on the muscles that should be active, and sensation that you should be, or that we're aiming to feel in a pose, rather than, your front knee is stacked above your front ankle at 90 degrees and back heel is it's not about that at all. And I think I just wish that everyone could do that training and just learn so that all the yoga teachers in the world were on the same page, and so that people who our students who come to practice with us don't ever go away thinking, my toes weren't pointing straight ahead of me, therefore I need to do more work in my yoga practice. Because we just have to, we have to take that all away and realize that alignment just doesn't matter at all.
At all. And I think that kind of touches on what we were speaking about before, how we can feel this real sense of, it has to look this way, or why can't I do that? And it just has to come from an understanding of that person has a very different body to me, that person had very different experiences to me, so the way that they can move and shape themselves is their own unique way, and that's wonderful. And we don't have to do that either.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the yoga styles that we practice nowadays were developed for young Indian boys, and their alignment is so different to ours as women. But even Western men have different anatomy. So it's interesting. I did learn that my body is quite suited to that. Like, I have real, as we talked about, I'm very flexible, especially in my hips. I have real external rotations, and I can generally get into what am I trying to say? I can get into that strict is the word I'm going for, that strict traditional alignment in a lot of the poses. But that's just by chance. I know, especially from doing a lot of the experiments with the other people on my course, that what I have, like the alignment that I have in my bones, is very different. It's very rare to be able to do that as a Western woman. So, we have to remember that. And the poses that we see on the big yoga magazines, they're in that alignment because the straight lines and the angles look good in a photograph, and that's it. I
think that's a really important thing to mention, is that what our bodies can look like sometimes might not be the most appealing. That doesn't mean it's not right either. So never compare yourself to any photos that you see. Know that it's okay. Absolutely. And I mean, there's sometimes, I think you and I probably both, like, I record any practice that I might do at home myself, mostly just to look back on. And sometimes when I'm just having a flow, and I might use that as a class plan later on. And you might be getting in, for me, I might be getting into a shape, and I'll watch it back and be like, that looks very different to how I saw it in my head. But
Oh, absolutely. But I guess that just goes back to show, it's really how it feels in your body, because you can feel, I do that too in my mind, my legs way up in the air, but then when I look at it, it's really not at all. But I feel it has that sensation of being like that. Yeah. It's really interesting. It is interesting to record your practice, but I think if you're going to do that, think about your intentions of doing it.
Yes.
Would be my advice, because if you're just recording yourself just to make sure that your alignment is correct, which I know I would never do and I know you would never do, you might be disappointed, and it just might prompt things that you don't want to happen. So with anything, just set your intention first. Be clear.
Yes, that's a very good point. Yeah, I have whenever I'm any sort of arm extension, for whatever reason, my elbow, from my shoulder to my elbow is in one line, and then from my elbow to my wrist is in another line, always. I just always have this weird little, I feel like I'm sometimes a little bit of a teapot. Never quite goes in a straight line, or if someone really points it out. So it just, all these like little things, and you just kind of have to embrace it. They're your little quirks about your body.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. So good.
Outside of all your yoga and your wonderful teaching that you do, you're also an artist.
I am, yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that. I have some of your little art projects that I've got at home, actually, which I think now that I've unpacked all my bits and pieces, I can find them again. So you created these beautiful little books that you're selling on Etsy.
So I call them zines, which is zines, I guess, I don't know if that's the technical term. It's like a magazine that you self-publish. So that's what I call them. But yeah, you can call them a booklet or whatever you like, really. My art background is, I've always been a really creative person, really, always really, really into art at school. I studied 4 years of tertiary education in art. My first degree was in jewellery and silversmithing. So I've always been really into working with intricate things and quite conceptual work as well. There's always some kind of hidden meaning behind it. And then years later, I decided that I wanted to be an art teacher. So I moved to Melbourne and I studied my Masters of Teaching, specialising in visual art. So I'm a secondary school art teacher, or I'm a trained secondary school art teacher. I'm not currently teaching in schools, but maybe one day. So my work has taken lots of turns since I first started kind of experimenting with jewellery, and I really loved making jewellery, but when I first moved to Melbourne, I kind of lost that. I didn't bring any of my tools with me, so I turned to kind of 2D work instead and got really into drawing. So the zines and the work that I create now is very much connected to my passions or interest in yoga and mindfulness and well-being. So the zine in particular is just my way of combining my love of art and yoga, and there's like a little structure that I include in each one. Usually there's a little bit of information about or a meditation, information about pranayama, breath work, might include, or probably would include, a colouring in page, because I think colouring in itself can be really mindful and meditative. A yoga pose. So I should have said most of them have a theme. So I
think I've got the gratitude and
so I have gratitude, balance, and grounding.
Yes.
So each of the breath work and the meditation or the yoga pose and all the information in there is connected to that theme. So I thought that would be a really nice way to organize my interests and yoga intentions into a visual thing that is a practical thing, tangible object that you can flick through. I really, really haven't succumbed to the digital art world, I never have really. I've always really been really hands-on. When I make the zines, I love folding the paper and, getting my hands dirty. I don't really get my hands dirty per se.
Metaphorically speaking.
Metaphorically, using the materials and the tools with my hands just helps me connect a lot more with what I'm with the final outcome. And I just don't get that when I'm working with Photoshop or a digital program. So I know that that's the way that we're heading, and I would like to do a bit of training on digital programs like Illustrator and Photoshop, just to see if, I'm sure it could support the work that I'm doing already and would probably open up more avenues for me. But for now, it's such a mindful and meditative practice for myself to put the pen to the paper and create. I love that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's definitely more zines on the way. I've also just finished doing some illustrations for my friend Frankie's book. She released a book, her first book not last year, 2018, I believe. It's called Anatomy. And it's all basically, she'd describe it better than me, but lovely, beautifully expressed short poems or prose. I'm not sure which is the correct term. She's the wordsmith, I'm just an artist. But I really enjoyed creating the illustrations for that book, and she asked me to do the illustrations for her next book, Alchemy, and it has just been such a wonderful process collaborating with her. And just I'm very inspired by words and ideas, so having her concepts was a really amazing starting point for me, a really wonderful brief for me to just run away with my creativity. I love doing commissions because I always have a lot of ideas, and having a commission helps me to focus. Sometimes it kind of reels everything in, and I have a really great starting point, and then it just evolves from there. And I love that kind of bouncing back and forward of communication with how it can be developed, and hearing other people's design ideas as well is wonderful.
And so nice that you've been able to join yoga and art together with a few projects now.
Yeah, I'm really happy that I've been able to do that, and I'm always thinking about more ways that I can do that. But I think having the zine for me, it's called Reconnect, I should have said that as well, is a really lovely way to ground, like it's a grounding process for me to just keep continuing to make more additions, not issues. I'm losing all my words today. Too much yoga, not enough art. I need to get onto the art. So this is a good thing for me to be talking about.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today, Suzie. It's been wonderful. And let everyone know where they can find you. So you've got your website and your Instagram, if you want to let me know your handles, and I'll put all these in the show notes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have an Instagram for my yoga, which is at Suzie Byatt Yoga. No underscores or dots or anything. And for my art, I have an Instagram page and a Facebook page, which definitely need more followers. So if you'd like to, it's at Suzie Byatt Art for both of those. And my website is www.suziebyatt.com. So
perfect.
Thank you, Jess, for sharing that. That's
pleasure. So we'll pop all of those in the show notes, so you can find Suzie. And yeah, if you can definitely recommend the zines. I just realized where one of mine is. I have one of those daggy travel wallets that whenever I travel, so I can put my passport, and everything's in the same thing. People make fun of me for it, but I'm like, it's very organized.
What a great idea. I love that.
So I was meant to be doing a bit of travel this year, but obviously that's not happening. So I think I put one of them in there because I was like, it's actually a good thing to have when you're traveling that you can flick out. So if you're sitting at an airport or something, you can just whip that out, be like, all right, I just need to do a little 5-minute grounding practice. So that would be my recommendation. If you've got them, they're just a perfect size. You can pop in a sort of bigger wallet or a notebook that you can have on the go with you. So
thanks for that tip. That's wonderful. And they're very, I think, well, I'm biased, but I think they're very reasonably priced. They're only $3.
They are very reasonably priced, everyone. It's you could probably bump that up a little bit. But a lovely way to support a local artist in a way that's affordable. So I also love that you have made it something that's quite affordable for everyone as well.
Yeah. Oh, can I just add one more thing, Jess?
Of course you can.
Just with regards to my yoga, I have created a Facebook group for my to continue teaching yoga.
Oh, wonderful.
So, yeah, I've got a little bit of an online community. It is currently donation based, so people are donating for access to the group, and I am teaching a few classes, vinyasa, yin, and then slow or gentle flow, and there's some meditations and pranayama tutorials in there as well. So to find the group, it's called Yoga the Love We Need, just on Facebook. If you search that in, I love a pun, so that's why it's
Love
called
it.
that. If anyone's interested in joining that, even if when I go back to teaching in studios, I really have enjoyed building this online community, so I'm sure I'll definitely keep teaching online even when I don't need to anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll put that group in the show notes as well, so you can find it. So thank you so much. And we're looking forward to studios being open, and looking forward to one day getting back to Melbourne and practicing with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jess. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you. You're such a beautiful person, and yeah, I just have loved every second of this interview. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, Suzie. What an amazing human. Like I said earlier, Suzie really is a breath of fresh air when it comes to yoga teachers, and I love her approach to teaching and to her practice, and she's just a wonderful, wonderful person. So I hope you enjoyed that chat with Suzie. You can follow her on Instagram at Suzie Byatt, and you can also join her Facebook group called Yoga the Love We Need. And I'll put all the links to her profile and where you can find her in the show notes, so you can have a little look and hopefully check out some of her yoga teachings and her art as well. Thanks again for joining me this week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again for listening to the Plant Powered Yoga podcast. For more information, visit plantpoweredyoga.com or visit the show notes below. I'd love it if you could rate, review, or even share this podcast with a friend. Thanks so much for helping create a kinder world, and see you next time.